I hope you're ready for some ill logic. Last time we went over a Week 5 battle with Haberfish and the Cleveland Cast forms. Please go check that video out first if you have not done so already, as I went over the team builder and battle in which, spoiler alert, the Buffalo Bouffalant emerged victorious yet again off of Wheezing and Scrafty, piloting a 6-0 win to bring our overall record to 5-0. This week, if you have not already guessed, we'll be taking on Matt, aka MrQuality, and his 3-2 Cincinnati Incineroar. Matt is the commissioner of our league and has done an awesome job keeping things running, as he is the only other member of the league that has draft league experience. He has a bit of a reputation to choke in the playoffs here, but this is his format now, and I do think there's a good chance that he is the scariest team in the entire league, especially after a couple of recent transactions. He's also been doing commentary for his battles, so I'll have his link in the description along with everything else. Speaking of, we're going to be going over the team builder battle and post-game interview. Those timestamps will also be in the description. So this is a very important match right now. I am 2 games up on second place, so a win here with 2 weeks left will guarantee us the first overall seed for the playoffs, which may also play in a little bit to my team building. While a win the next couple of weeks could be nice, this team as well as the one next week are probably the 2 best in the league, so I hope you'll forgive me if I don't reveal all of my tricks just yet. Still, a W would obviously be nice, so I'll be doing my best. As I said before, I think Matt may very well have the best team in the league between his first round pick Dragapult, Cinderace, new acquisitions, both Cobalion and Ninetales, the league kill leader, Charizard, due to its Dynamax potential, Rotom-Mow, Slurpuff, Lapras as another Gigantamax target, Golurk, and Bronzong. So it's overall very well rounded, even with 3 fire types, and the speed tiers at the top are ridiculous. This team is an absolute menace to prepare for and to face off against, and it stands out as a team that can win it all come playoffs. We definitely need to be careful here, not only to win this round, but to perhaps not show all of our cards, so there's still something left up the old sleeve come playoffs. Or maybe the opposite, and overexpose them to a plethora of new ideas to psych them out and make them unsure as to what is coming. Either way, let's go over the team, starting with his least threatening members, or those least likely to come. Golurk has a very bad matchup, getting destroyed by Stab on 6 separate team members and having a tough time doing anything to the Levitators. He's got better rockers anyway, so this seems like an easy leave. Cobalion, though better, still doesn't do that well either, especially when considering hard checks like Aegislash or Toad, or the ability to outspeed and revenge with Dugtrio or Excelgor. It's a possible bring, but there I think are better choices. Slurpuff is always a threat, even being this low in my threat scaling, because there is a single use of Sticky Webs or Belly Drum that can spell my end. I do have pretty darn good speed tiers too, but Sticky Web seems a little unnecessary on top of his own speed advantage, and setup Slurpuff can get stopped by things like Aegislash or Wheezing, depending on his coverage moves. A possible bring for sure, but maybe not quite as good as the others. Finally, Lapras has had good use for him this season, being able to set up screens in Gigantamax form and hitting things like my Toad super effectively with Freeze Dry, but it is still overall lacking, I think, compared to what Charizard can do. I am a little bit concerned about this coming with the Charizard, giving him multiple setup options. It can kind of freak me out a little bit as I'm unsure of which one he's going to Gigantamax, but I think Charizard just is much better in that department. Again, I don't think the 4 that I mentioned are that bad. Well, okay, maybe Golurk is, but the other 3 still have a very real chance to come and put in work, which is the scary part of the team for sure. Still, compared to the others, I think it's just less likely, so to start with what I do think is most likely to come, I need to start off with Rotom, because I'm a huge fan of the Rotom forms. I love what Mow can bring to the table. My possible checks can still get statused or volt switched out of for very respectable chunk, as well as a very good speed stat, so I think it provides enough utility to justify bringing. Bronzong is a very good rocker here, as well as a classic check to the non-Reshiram forms of Kyurem. This, I think, should come just for the Kyurem, as it resists my stabs and can fire back steel moves or toxic, while also setting up those sneaky pebbles to chip away at me. Again, it can also threaten something like Toxic on me anytime it pleases to further the frustration. Cinderace may not have Libero legal on our league quite yet, despite the DLC coming out, but it still remains incredibly threatening with its super high speed stat, power, and coverage. Bulk Up could let it hit through anything I've got, especially as it could just force a switch and then beat me down with something like firefighting psychic coverage. It can also run Priority and Sucker Punch for once, or perhaps the most unfortunate is Court Change, which is an easy way to help protect the Charizard. Dragapult is an absolute menace, and I believe it's the kill leader on the site that we're using. It has so much versatility between Dragon Dance, Specs, Sub-Disable, and the speed and power on this thing is ridiculous. Not to mention Infiltrator to get behind screens I may set up, as well as my tendency to go Substitute. And if that weren't bad enough, he has a new Sunsetter on his team in the form of Ninetales, who not only supports his other 2 fire types, but hits my team hard by itself. Stab plus Solar Beam destroys my team hardcore, along with a nasty speed stat to make this a real problem. And then there's Charizard. So, in preparation each week, I make a matchup chart and put in numbers based on my individual Pokemon and their ability to tackle threats. Since starting that process, I can think of only one other time that I've had a matchup so bad against an individual Pokemon. Charizard has the ability to Dynamax, or more likely Gigantamax, sending up Sudden for itself, or chipping away way too much from everything on my team but Rotom with Wildfire. It has easy access to Stab Airstream as well, boosting its speed outside of Revenge Kill range, and even has access to Solar Beam to blast through things like Seismitoad. And if that weren't bad enough, Solar Power makes several 2-hit KOs into 1-hit KOs, giving it the ability to muscle through anything I have that could possibly compete with its power and speed. Make no mistake, this thing will sweep me if I give it even an inch. Though I try to remain positive when talking about what my team can do back, I'm afraid I can't do that much of that in this section. I've genuinely got my work cut out for me here. Excelgor, for example, is absolutely worthless, as most of the threats I can outspeed either don't care about my Bug Buzz or other options, while I get absolutely devastated back. Webs don't help much either, as I can't even Revenge Kill the biggest threats because of Dynamax giving double HP. Finally, Court Change can make all of my efforts of setting up more than just futile, but detrimental, so no real reason to bring it here. Celebi also struggles mightily, being outsped by or speed tying with all 3 fire types, plus the Dragapult. Its utility could be helpful here, but it just doesn't have a chance to use it. Alolan Dugtrio has a place in outspeeding Charizard and Ninetales, among others, but is still outsped by the Cinderace and Dragapult, the 2 aforementioned threats that could very easily get to +1 with a max Airstream or Scarf anyways. Finally, Weezing is riding the bench for the first time this week. It struggles against those top threats, who can easily carry coverage for it, or just hit it from its weaker special defense. Weezing doesn't seem active enough in the matchup for my liking, as you need to be either able to tank or hit back hard, and a Weezing unfortunately does not do either well enough. So here is the squad assembled for this week. I think I'd like to start off with the 2 Tier 1s, as they are very similar. Kyurem-Black will be running back the Choice Scarf that it had last week due to the ability to outspeed Dragapult, only this time it's going to be purely physical instead of purely special. This will devastate any non-steel type switching in on this between the 4 moves. Outrage especially has some stupid numbers, with being able to OHKO things like Cinderace and Ninetales. Stone Edge can actually OHKO the Charizard in big for me, so if it doesn't have the boost or Sun isn't up, I can outspeed or take a hit and KO back with the rock coverage. Otherwise, Fusion Bolt and Icicle Spear are notorious for their coverage, hitting Lapras and Rotom especially, with Fusion Bolt also being the best option for Bronzong and Cobalion, though I really shouldn't be staying in on them anyways. Not when I have an Aegislash I can switch into, which, surprise surprise, is wielding a Choice Scarf this week. It can outspeed everything up to Cobalion and potentially get a nice surprise in when it hits with a Stab move or Head Smash. Yes, another rock move for Charizard, and I can outspeed it if it doesn't have a boost up. That's basically the goal here. Aside from being locked into a bad Scarf move, nothing should allow Charizard to be setting up all that easily without taking some punishment first. Even if just taking out Ninetales, the Facilitator quickly would be very nice, so maybe Ninetales switches in on a Shadow Claw and things that can outspeed me and take me out first, and then gets hit by another one. That's the main goal, or the idea of the Scarf on Aegislash. Despite the Scarf, I still do have Shadow Sneak, because it lets me get a hit in on something like Dragapult, or Cobalion, or Cinderace, or a boosted Mon in a pinch. Okay, so you say? So what happens if Charizard does happen to set up? What then? Well, the only possible answer I have is a full special defensive Rotom-Heat with Thunder Wave. Max HP and special defense along with a Calm Nature. With that, I can guaranteed take a Max Flare or Max G-Max Wildfire in the sun and cripple it in return with a Thunder Wave, such that even if I do not live another hit, I will waste another Dynamax turn and be able to outspeed in the future, while also relying perhaps on a little bit of yellow magic. The rest is pretty standard. Volt Switch will still absolutely chunk Charizard and can simply be used after Dynamax ends to take it out if needed or if possible, while Overheat in the sun is too good of a prospect to pass up. Defog is nice if rocks get court changed or if he gets webs up, a good backup option for sure. It's here for Charizard though, first and foremost, and I just have to hope I can keep it healthy enough for that. The flip side of Rotom is, of course, Seismitoad, who is physically offensive and defensive this week. He's got Knockoff, Earthquake, and a cheeky Rock Tomb for possible switches, along with the Stealth Rock. The truth is that his removal is somewhat limited, and if Slurpuff doesn't come, the only hazards in play this week are Stealth Rock. If we both have them up, the onus is on him to defog due to multiple fire types and Lapras that could come. I doubt he's bringing that many boots this week. Rocks could end up being clutch, and this is also my designated Cinderace response in Ninetales check. If Ninetales is in on me, I may think it can KO with Solar Beam, or it may think they can KO me back with Solar Beam, but in reality it only does up to about 70% or so, while Earthquake is a guaranteed OHKO, even from full, in response, thanks to the EVs. Toad could then be later used as a sack or something, hoping to get up rocks. The important thing is ending this on early. In an aggressive game where this happens, a later Pokemon can set the rain and permanently end his Sun boosted shenanigans. The biggest threat he has outside of the Sun is Dragapult, and to that end, we've got a Scrafty. Intimidate was definitely an option for Dragapult, but he could bring Clear Body to negate it, and I think I'd much rather keep some longevity here in case I need to come in on and beat something like a Toxic Bronzong or a Toxic Lapras, among other things. Otherwise, it's pretty standard except for the Protect over Bulk Up, which is used to stall things like Leftover Recovery, Sun turns as well, or even if I really need to, survive a Dynamax turn against Charizard, because through Protect it will still do damage, but I will survive. So, in the last ditch effort, it can still be used for that. The EVs, as mentioned before, help against Dragapult as I should survive 2 Life Orb Dragon Darts, while also taking a special Dragapult like a champ, meaning he has to Dragon Dance correctly to muscle through. Speaking of muscling through, though, it is time, finally, for the return of Kingler. I need a lot of coverage this time, so I couldn't make room for Swords Dance, but Agility is very nice to help me outspeed +1 Charizard or Scarf Ninetales, among other things, along with the Focus Sash to help facilitate that. Max Geyser can KO Ninetales even through the sun, and otherwise change the weather and do a buttload of damage to anything not named Lapras. Knockoff acts as Max Darkness to unhit KO Dragapult while outspeeding it at +2. And X-Scissor becomes Max Flutterby, has a good chance to OHKO the Rotom-Mow, as well as lowering the special attack of anything switching in. This is really the only thing I can do if he decides to Gigantamax the Lapras. I really wanted to find room for superpower, but figured that lowering Gmax the Lapras' special attack would be good enough to help stall out screens, or at least force switches at some point, and the other coverage I found much more necessary. Though there are a lot of what-ifs on the team, for sure, but I feel okay about what I've got. Let's see how it played out. Team Preview is something that I'm still not sure I take full advantage of, being that I started competitive play back in Gen 4 when we didn't have it available. Still, there's quite a bit to do at the startup screen, such as identify what is and isn't here. Cobalion is the choice over Bronzong, I see, which I guess isn't too surprising, I suppose, considering it can still set rocks and beat Kyurem. The important thing to note here, though, are the inclusion of Lapras, which means I cannot tell for sure which Pokemon is going to Gigantamax, but more importantly, a lack of Slurpuff and Cinderace. No webs are coming on my side of the field, and his only possible removal now is Defog from Rotom-Mow. With this being said, I think I need to try and get rocks up somewhat quickly, considering Toad no longer even needs to check Cinderace, and can instead more freely give Stealth Rock support for the Rock's weak team. The onus is on him to defog with Rotom-Mow, in particular, as his only removal, as rocks will be hurting him far more than it hurts me, especially with my Rotom wearing a pair of boots. Nice last-minute addition there. With that in mind, I think Toad makes sense as a lead here, as he's going to start off with the Cobalion. So, these first few turns, including the lead, I definitely took my time with, thinking out my moves and the 50-50s that come with it. In this case, Cobalion could definitely set up rocks, which of course affects mostly my Kyurem, as well as the Focus Sash on the Kingler. I could theoretically switch out into the Kingler, who takes the hit from Cobalion well, and can set up the agility in order to help break through. The other options are that he simply fires off an attack, or switches, which means that Toad could probably stay in. Even then, rocks seem pretty easy at first, but I could take advantage of him staying in with a fat Earthquake. But if he goes Charizard right now to avoid Rock's damage, Rock Tomb would be best, or maybe a knockoff as a middle ground play, but that doesn't really work if Cobalion stays in. To avoid these tough thoughts, I just decide to play it easy. He goes out into his Rotom, and I get my Stealth Rocks up, which is a pretty nice first turn. It does make the right play there, I think, getting the Defogging Grass type in, but now I have even more choices to make than before, although I am in a much better situation, I think. So Defog is an easy play from him if he has it. He could also very easily anticipate that I switch with something like a Volt Switch, or Will-O-Wisp as a pretty easy middle ground play too. Ultimately, I decided after what happened last week where my Kyurem never came in, I thought it would be a nice idea to just bring it in here, as he does just click Leaf Storm. It does 20% to me, but also harshly lowers his special attack, so once again, I think another correct play here. It was tough to make, but we also have another tough one right away here. So Icicle Spear is obviously the super effective move, but Lapras could pretty easily come in on this, and actually it seems pretty unlikely that Rotom stays in at all at -2 special attack. Outrage is an interesting middle ground play, but Cobalion eats it up, and I'm going to be forced out either way once I get confused. I really don't want to give something the opportunity to set up like that. Fusion Bolt seems to be the play to me, as it's my best option against both Cobalion and Lapras as the likely switches. And that will pay off as Lapras comes in not taking rocks damage and takes 83% from Fusion Bolt. It seems pretty safe for me to just go for another Fusion Bolt, pick up the first KO of the game. So, amazing start with just making all the right plays here. I feel like I'm getting pretty lucky for sure. Having the first KO come in on turn 4. So from here, I think Cobalion makes a lot of sense. It's the very easy revenge option. It tells me that this thing could be Scarfed as well. And there was a part of me just telling me to go Kingler here before rocks come up, but I also thought maybe just go for a straightforward close combat, so I decided to make the safe play and just go into the Aegislash, as he does indeed set up his rocks. It may have been interesting to try to go Kingler at that point, but I mean, I think it's fine. So with Aegislash in, I don't have close combat myself this week. Cobalion still does very much struggle to hit me, so I think Shadow Claw is a pretty easy middle ground play. And it's actually going to catch the Rotom with a good about, 40% there. In addition to the rocks, it will bring it down below half, which is pretty nice. So, once again, I got another interesting scenario. I could break the Volt Switch and go Seismitoad, or I could go Kyurem in the hope of taking another attack. But those kind of invite in unwanted guests as before, and it's a little bit risky. I figure Aegislash might be able to snag a crit or something here, and it can still kind of check things, even if it's burnt, with Shadow Sneak being able to pick something off. Head Smash is still going to one-shot the Charizard, and if he doesn't have boots, I might as well just go for another one here, as I get very lucky and Rotom tricks me a Choice Scarf. The irony is palpable here, as I get another Shadow Claw for free. Absolutely nothing happens from him, so it's not my Scarf, I'll take it. I get Rotom within Rock's chip range, and at this point I know he either does not have Defog, or he needs Defog in this turn in order to be able to come in later. So I think another Shadow Claw is pretty safe. He Volt Switches out, probably hoping for a switch or something there, and he goes into the Cobalion, who will actually take less than a third from the Shadow Claw. And we got another Volt Switch, bring me dangerously low, as both of those hits were on my Sword form. But Rotom will just kind of take itself out with the rocks. I think that was probably the right play there, to be honest. So, I think the lack of switch on my part has really helped here so far. Despite me preaching about how good Volt Switch and U-Turn are in recent matches, I've kind of been letting my checks and walls get worn down a little too easily. So having things like Scrafty and Rotom at full health at this point in the match seems super crucial, and I'm very happy with how I was playing that as well. On that note, though, I could easily have gotten punished at some point in there with a burn, which I found out later was the last move on Rotom, but I kind of don't mind that much. I don't think I would terribly mind, especially with a high crit chance and the ability to just be able to switch in later. But back to the situation at hand here, Cobalion is back in. It seems a little odd, but I know he's got to be able to outspeed my Scarfer, so Cobalion is at this point probably guaranteed to be a Scarf. I can save the Aegislash for later, for a Scarf outspeed or a Shadow Sneak onto the Dragapult, so I feel like maybe Toad is the proper switch in, considering he may just try to continue with a momentum game. So he just goes for an Iron Head. So here's another interesting scenario. I felt like the ground move is super telegraphed here. His only switch in is the Charizard, so as he goes for another Iron Head, thankfully does not flinch. I actually went for Rock Tomb, predicting the Charizard to switch in. It does get a nice little speed drop there, which could make him concerned and swap out. But at this point, too, no more prediction. I don't need to. He's got to be scared already of a Rock Tomb, so I doubt he's going to be going into Charizard. So the easy play is just Earthquake. He actually brings in the Dragapult, of all things, and is going to take over half of his health with that Earthquake. I will definitely take that. I got a huge chunk of damage off for free, so even if he sets up or anything else, or even takes me out here by some stretch, I'm still pretty okay with that. Despite being low, I know Dragapult is in here just to scare me off, and I've already said I need to keep my checks in the back as healthy as possible. So I'm going to make another correct play and stay in on the Dragon Dance and just take him out with the knockoff as I show him the last move, and getting Toad yet another kill, which is pretty interesting. So Ninetales is in, taking rocks damage, and this is another really interesting scenario where I just need to not overthink. We've got a similar situation here. It's a little more dramatic, though, I think. He doesn't know that I am a Rindoberry, but there is an actually good chance that I can survive a Solar Beam and KO back with the Earthquake. And once again, he's going to go for a setup move, and I am able to claim yet another KO with Seismitoad just sticking around. I'm kind of trying to sack this thing a little bit, and it just keeps working. But, of course, it is time to see the real reason why he brought the Ninetales in was to get his 8 turns, now 7 turns of Sun, which means this now 50% healthy monster gets to come in and just click buttons. As I've said before, Everything that's come with the Seismitoad has just been a luxury at this point, so I don't see any reason not to just sack off the Toad here, as he does in fact Gigantamax and go for Max Airstream to take it out. It's not a 6-0, but I mean, Seismitoad will take all those kills, and then we see Life Orb chip and Solar Power chip. It's starting to get a little hefty, so I don't need to overthink things here. I'm a little scared, how many things do I have to stack off here? I can't Revenge Kill with Kyurem or Aegislash anymore. What do I have for it? This is the whole point of bringing the max HP, max special defense Rotom. Just send it in. So do so. Don't take any chip from the rocks. And actually, look at the calcs. There is a chance that the uninvested Volt Switch could KO. And even if it doesn't, he will go down this turn. So G-Max Wildfire does 75%. That is a resisted move to a fully specially defensive Rotom. Just pointing that out. As Volt Switch will do 34%, leaving it with just a little bit of health left. I'll bring in the Kingler at the end, as Solar Power will take itself out, and I take a little bit from the G-Max Wildfire too, of course. So the last thing in is the Cobalion, and this is going to be relatively fast, I think. A couple of G-Max Geysers will change the weather and then power it up, and actually get to survive with 2% left here. Thank goodness for that, G-Max. Feels pretty good. Kingler just nabbing another KO at the end of the game. There to finish off the 5-0 victory, securing the #1 seed for the playoffs in the process. Good game to Matt. The team was incredibly difficult to prepare for, but I think I got a couple of very good reads in there early to take advantages of some of the weaknesses of the team. We can definitely breathe easy for a little bit, as if our opponent next week wins his match, he will lock in the #2 seed, and our match may end up being a little memeier than you would expect. So with that, I think we'll just head over to the post-game interview. Alright, here we are with the post-game interview with Matt, aka at MrQuality. How are you doing, sir?
Not bad. How about you?
Not bad. It's been busy here, but I think we're doing all right. So we're just gonna go over the teams here. See the Cobalion, Rotom, Charizard, Ninetales, Dragapult, and Lapras. I think the first thing that stands out to me is you brought both of the Tier 5s. I know that part of the interest in having Tier 5s as the Dynamax Pokemon was that we weren't specifying exactly one, so there was a chance to bring both of them. What went behind the decision to bring both? Although I also see that, actually, now I look at the Charizard was the only one that was Gigantamax as well. Was that intended from the start as well, or?
No. I definitely... Okay, yeah, I thought that, well, I only brought Lapras because I just honestly wanted a defensive Pokemon. I did never have any intention of, like, Gigantamaxing it.
Sure.
So I just kind of, like, put more of a defensive, like, spread into it.
Sure.
And
still had me spooked at the beginning for sure, where, like, you played a mind game with me at the beginning, like, which one is he going to pick?
Yeah, and so I was kind of just, like, making the spread, like, not copying it from any previous weeks or anything, where I had, like, gone Gigantamax and, like, put a little more offensive, like, power into it, and so definitely slipped through the cracks of adding the Gigantamax to it, but didn't end up mattering. I mean, it didn't also do a great job defensively for me anyway.
It's kind of lucky predict, but...
Yeah. So, it's a shame, but yeah, it is what it is. Yeah.
So I see with the Charizard too, I've noticed that you seem to be favoring Blast Burn quite a bit. Do you really like or appreciate that extra boost of power, having Blast Burn in addition to Flamethrower then?
I do, yeah. And it's kind of, like, comes down to the difference between whether I'm, Dynamaxed or not. Because if I had gone the Lapras route, for instance, then, I would never click Blast Burn unless it was, like, to win the game.
That's true.
Or if I was going to go down to Solar Power that turn. But, yeah, so just, accuracy versus power, because it is pretty significant when I'm Dynamaxed, and I don't really need anything else for coverage in this matchup. The only other, like, type coverage that, like, I might ever find useful in Charizard is, like, Rock, but then as a max move that sets the Sandstorm, which I do not want.
Yeah, directly inhibits what else you're trying to do with it, true.
Yeah. So.
And to facilitate that, of course, the Ninetales, and we run a couple of tricky sets on here. I see Nasty Plot, 2 attacks. Firegrass, like, just those 2 types alone was so tough for me to cover in general with the whole team.
Yeah. not a whole lot to say there. I thought about like doing that one like more defensively, but I decided to just like go for that set. Ended up like misplaying at one point. I mean, it wasn't on the field for long. And that's kind of like been my philosophy with Ninetales so far, to just kind of like set this on and get out of the way. But
the Heat Rock helps for that for sure. Yeah. Even if you don't go straight into Charizard, like you have the option to see a couple Volt Switchers on there, so you still have options with it.
Right, yeah. And I specifically put like 2 Scarf Volt Switchers on for the purpose of just like being faster than Excelgor, which you didn't end up bringing. But I was hoping that I would lead off like Cobalion against that, and then just be able to like damage you and like not knock you down to a sash or like something like that, and then switch into whatever I wanted from there. But of course you didn't bring it, still decided to lead Cobalion, and then that kind of put me in a predicament because I realized on turn 1, sitting there picking my move, that I didn't have any way to get rid of Stealth Rock, and I knew there was a good chance you were going to go for it, but I didn't want to go into Charizard right away because I was afraid then that there might be a water move predicting that, so it was kind of tough for me. Unfortunately, the decision I made didn't end up letting Charizard last too long anyway, but
There's a similar thought process with my Dynamax where I had a focus sash on the Kingler. I thought, well, if he's leading Cobalion, maybe I just swap right into that because rocks are going to break that. I don't necessarily want to defog later. I felt like with having a Charizard in the field, the impetus was kind of more on you to defog if your Rotom had it. So I'd end up having to be fine with that trade. But,
Yep.
Yeah, so Cobalion Scarfed, Volt Switch, always pretty good. Anything else about the Cobalion?
No, I mean, I just had like the 2 stab coverage moves and then like Stealth Rock in addition to that, and didn't end up being able to do like a whole ton with it. In previous weeks, I had run Swords Dance, and I've been able to like sweep at least once, like just with that, because I mean the base 108 is like pretty decent, and I've
enough that you're able to paired it too.
Yeah, and that was able to still outspeed the Excelgor in this case, but
then you had 2 Scarfers with Rotom-Mow. I do really like Trick on Rotom. I think that's why I like Rotom so much, is you just run Volt Switch, your coverage move of your type, and then you get to run Havoc with the other moves. So a possible switch-in is no longer a switch-in because it gets statused, it gets tricked, you get a free defog. Like, Rotom's so good.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one thing that I did think was kind of like beneficial about the way I played in this game, because I definitely made like a lot of like fairly major mistakes, but I like just having Rotom in front of Aegislash, I was able to kind of put pressure on with Trick, because like even if basically like if you didn't want the Scarf, then you would have had to switch out and something else would have been able to, like, had to take it, because even if you King Shielded, then like it would have gone through that too. So of course you ended up being banded, so it wasn't like
Scarf,
you were already like planning to be locked into your move.
Exactly. Yeah, I was very scared of Will-O-Wisp in particular. Like, I don't have any switch outs into this that will take a Will-O-Wisp well. So, oh man, that was a tough 50-50, or maybe worse. You had a lot of different options there, but
yeah.
And then the last one, the Dragon Dance set up Dragapult, which this thing is such a mess. Oh my gosh, I feel like I got so lucky too.
I should have just like let go of Charizard earlier, honestly, because I was just like trying to preserve it for a while, and like I mentioned that I realized very early on that like I wasn't gonna be able to do anything about the rocks, and so like I hoped by setting mine up and like not playing like too obviously that I could like convince you to like come in and defog or something like that.
Right.
But yeah, I should have just like accepted that Charizard was pretty much shot from the time that those went up, and then like put my offensive power into Dragapult, because if I had like come in at full health and been able to set up, then it would have been like a little bit more different of a story. Because you mentioned you had Scrafty, like to counter it. I don't know.
At +1, it can take a Dragon Darts, but it starts getting very dicey if I let it take any damage there.
Right. So
Even then, I'd be
Yeah,
worried. Like,
it would
I
have
was
at least.
debating if I wanted to intimidate because this thing could have the clear body anyways. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was even thinking about that. I'm like, I don't even, because since I was Infiltrator, I was like looking at that, and I'm like, well, Intimidate, like, it would kind of just cancel out and everything.
Right, but I run substitute like every single week, so
right.
should make that a little easier, I think. So I think the main thing that you didn't bring that stood out to me was the Cinderace. There's kind of an overwhelming amount of speed on your side, and even things like the Scarf Aegislash could not outspeed the Cinderace, in addition to Court Chain. So that's probably the biggest reason I didn't bring the Excelgor. Any reason for no Cinderace in the match?
Well, I think that this week I was just trying to like lean into the whole Ninetales Charizard like duo a little bit, and so I really didn't want like more fire than that. And had I like realized the whole hazard problem, then I might have reconsidered, because then I could have at least like gotten them back to the other side of the field. But other than that, I mean, I don't know. I just don't think it was like particularly handy here. It could have been good, like if I did decide to just like go with Gigantamax Lapras, but I don't know. I think that Charizard, I mean, like you mentioned with the fire and grass like attacking combo, like
just those two alone were sick, yeah.
Yeah, and so having that on both Ninetales and Charizard, I thought was like really beneficial here, and like I saw that Aegislash was going to be like a big problem in particular for like Dragapult, and I was like, well, I need something that can take that out, and so while Cinderace could like probably also do that, I mean, there's absolutely no doubt that Charizard would have been able to, so I just decided to go that route here.
Fair enough. A couple good answers to it for sure. I think the other thing then that stood out was the Bronzong. I know Bronzong's generally a check for Kyurems in their different forms, aside from fire coverage from the Kyurem White form, of course. But I was kind of anticipating that as the Stealth Rocker, and I see the Cobalion over top of it. Was that mostly for the speed, like the Scarf Volt switch like you mentioned before then?
Yeah, I really wanted to just kind of do lots of like switching in and out, particularly between those two, and then also switching into any other favorable matchups positioning wise with those, and so that's kind of like why I didn't bring it. I think like if I had a 7th slot, like I would have brought that for sure. I think that since I did have another check for Kyurem, I mean, I think both in Cobalion and in Dragapult, I wasn't like terribly afraid of it, and so it just didn't seem like a necessity. A little more defensive, like bulk would have been like better, but at the same time, I mean, I could have put a little more into Ninetales, so
true.
Yeah.
So the other two that weren't brought, the Slurpuff and the Golurk, I kind of agree. I thought those were maybe the weakest members of the matchup. Slurpuff, of course, has the possibility to sweep, but I have things like the Aegislash and the Weezing to kind of stop it. Sticky Webs is just kind of extra punishment for the speed control you already have over top of me. The Golurk is, I counted it, it's 6 of my bonds have super effective stab on it. It all outspeed it, so that was pretty rough for it too.
Yeah, I mean, those two I hardly even considered. I was like, I mean, I very briefly thought about Slurpuff when I was thinking of ways to just put the speed pressure on you. I was like, well, I could go for the belly drum and then unburden, but I don't know. I just figured that there'd be too much on your team to be able to counter it, and so I didn't even go for it.
I do think I agree overall. So I'll wrap things up. Do you have any closing thoughts on the team building process or the battle or anything else?
Well, I think that I've been playing in general too well this season to put as little time as I did into building this team. So if you're listening and you're thinking you have a shot at doing well, continue putting effort into your team building process, and also don't brain fart during the match, because that helps too. So
that will help.
Other than that, yeah.
I definitely do not look forward to playing you in playoffs, so if you could please choke in there, please, before I have to fight you. Do not have to go against this Charizard again.
Right, I got to choke all, it doesn't matter. Got to get that low seed, knock you out early, right? So,
that's what it's all about.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, this was a matchup that I was definitely like afraid of for a while. And I mean, hey, I didn't get 6-0 like I did last week, so that's like pretty
improvement. It only goes up from here, right?
Exactly, yeah. And so with now just 1 week left in the regular season, I mean, we gotta start shifting gears and thinking about what comes after that. So.
Yeah, playoffs will matter. So thanks for joining for the interview. Your links and everything will be down below, so please go check out MrQuality, the only other person doing content right now in the league, and also the runner of the main page. So, and that'll wrap things up here. Next week we've got the final week against the Seattle Steamrollers. I don't know, Steamrollers I'm going to say. And I guess we'll see you all then.